about the what, why, and how. So what is feature toggle? Why do we really need it? And how do we go about implementing it? And since I am a hands-on person, how we do it will be shown with a working demo of a very small problem statement. Basically, what does a toggle mean? Toggle by electronics means on or off, right? That's what we mean. That's what we mean by toggles. Generally, that is where toggle word started from in electronics. So essentially, feature toggle essentially means that for software development, it is a feature that you either can switch on and switch off, and you don't really need to have separate code branches for that. So within the same code branch, for two different customers or two different clients, you can either have that switch on, and for the other one, you can have it as switched off. So that is what feature toggle essentially is. How did it come into our software practice? So basically, we are a big company spanning a multitude of geographies with teams working across multiple time zones. So, when you start working on a feature, you have teams working in US, Canada, Australia, India. None of these time zones they ultimately meet, and at the end of the day, when I'm just about to merge my code in my branch, I realize that I have to actually refresh my own branch first, and then I can merge it. To top it all, when there are people coming in from different cadres and different types of code styles, that merging becomes an issue, a big time issue. So I'm sure, we generally call it a merge hell. It comes in from the DLL hell, but we have spent days in and days out just merging the code, wherein we just had to find, oh my god, this has been changed, is this valid? Now I changed this function too, and he has also changed this function. What do I do with this? How do I do? Whose features go in first? It's a pain. So from there we started doing the trunk based development. Okay, so what we essentially do is every developer commits goes to the trunk. The trunk is maintained in a sanity state, and the release engineer only cherry picks certain commits. So for instance, this is the greens are the developer commits. The release engineer cherry picks the particular commits, and then he releases the branch to whoever he wants to release. So all the developer commits, they generally go to the trunk, and you don't really branch codes and then merge them back to the trunk and then have a sane trunk and then again rebranch. All that is gone. The advantage I get is my continuous delivery. All this pipeline is going through an automated test suite to ensure that everything is working fine. It goes through my continuous integration process, and finally this is the only place from where I'll give my I know that this is one same piece, right? I don't really have to worry about what is going on in the other branches, what is the release engineer doing. I know that whatever is going out of here is going out well, right? So here, now with this came in a trouble or a problem that we solved through feature toggle. Now the problem was there are a couple of features which take a couple of sprints to develop and probably go to a state wherein you can actually say it is good to go to production. Now, if I have to make a release by then and that feature is still not done, it's half cooked, half baked, not tested, how do I ship it? So therein I have a toggle, right? And I switch off that toggle that this feature is not meant for production. Earlier we used to call it wet paint. That was the time, probably early 2000s, we used to call it wet paint. And we used to maintain it through code, everything used to be maintained through code. That if, okay, this is these modules are in the wet paint section, so don't touch them. But now with, things progressing and things moving out in a better way, and with agile and extreme programming practices coming in, now it has a valid industry term called feature toggle. Now, why do we really need it? So we all understand what toggle is, right? So switch it on or switch it off based on your need. Why do we need it? We need it for a couple of reasons. Some of the few prominent ones are A/B testing, right? So for instance, you want a feature to be given. How many of you have used Facebook Messenger? Don't tell me. Facebook Messenger? Just you? I guess everybody, practically everybody. Do you know when it was released? It was not to the entire community. It was only for a particular set of users based on their particular target as to who should be getting Facebook Messenger. Not everybody had it. That was an A/B testing feature. They had given it only to a specific set of customers. Now, if you really want to do that through software feature toggles, that's possible. You can just give a couple of features only to a particular set of customers, and then you can, say that for this set of customers, page A would go in, which is an existing page or existing feature, and then there is this experimental page or a new feature that I want to tag for some other customers. For that, I can make use of feature toggle and just switch it on for particular geography, particular server, particular IPs, particular users. So that is where one of the needs of feature toggle comes in. Unfinished code in production. As I mentioned, a code may take several sprints to complete, and to be good to go to production, it is likely that it. How many of you have heard of Flickr? You've used Flickr? Have you heard of something called 10 plus deployments a day? Do you know Flickr is making 10 deployments a day? Now, every feature is obviously not being done in 1/10 of a day, right? 1/10 of a day is too short a time to get a feature ready in, but they are still doing it. Why? Because they have features, feature bits, whatever they call it, wherein they can make such a steady progress that code that is unfinished is still ready to go in production, right? Reducing risk associated with the large change. Now, recently we were working on an e-commerce application, and we had introduced machine learning algorithms so that we can come up with recommendation engines during the holiday season. Okay, that this is something that probably you need. Now, what happened was, by the time the holiday season comes, most of the customers have already made up their mind what is it that they want to buy. They don't really need a recommendation engine, right? They've already made up their mind, they're just waiting for discounts. The moment the merchant gives the discounts, they go ahead and buy it. But the recommendation engine increased the load on my servers, because of which I was not able to take the holiday season load. Now, if I put my system to halt, I'm screwed. I lose business. In an hour, I can get thousands of orders, and my system, if it is out for an hour, I lose business, which is not something that I want. But since we had feature toggles for the recommendation engine, we just switched the toggle off, and everything was smooth. None of the models were loaded, none of the recommendation engines ran. This is a very handy feature when you want to roll out a new feature which might be risky. As a matter of fact, Twitter, when it started, what they did was, they moved 25% of their load base to Cassandra. And they realized that post 25% the performance was going down. So they immediately switched it back to the main DB, and they fixed their issues, and then they moved back to Cassandra. So this is a feature that is being used by a multitude of companies which have tried, tested, and incorporated it. And Pitney Bowes was one such example wherein we switched off the recommendation engine during the holiday season. Another, turning a resource-heavy feature off in high-load conditions. Again, recommendation engine was one such example. If you have a feature which is very high in taking load, it is taking a lot of load, and you want that some other application should be taking care of that, you can switch the first part of the application as off. Phased rollout, as I said, messenger. So either you can have, there are two reasons for a phased rollout. Either you're not sure about whether this will work in a particular scenario, or in case you think that it may have bugs, so you want to raise out only as a beta product for the end customer, wherein the customer can come up and report issues. So phased rollout is another way wherein you can just open it out for a particular geography or a particular set of IPs or a particular set of users, wherein this can be used as a feature that will help you, right? And it's safe to fail, right? If I fail, there is nothing that will stop my system. I can always switch off that feature. We were safe to fail, and that is the reason we rolled out in the holiday season. Otherwise, we wouldn't have. So now we know what is feature toggle, and we know that why we need it, right? Now there are several types of toggles. Some of them span a couple of sprints and they end. Some of them stay longer, and some of them are there forever, right? So based on that, we have either release toggles, business toggles, ops or deployment toggles, and then we have experiment toggles. Now what we mean by release toggles is that a feature is not yet finished. It will take a couple of days, couple of sprints to finish, but ultimately when it is done, it will be done, right? That feature toggle would be removed. That's my release toggle. Business toggle, for instance, the business says that for Canada geography this is good enough, but probably for Brazil it is not. So switch it on for Canada, but switch it off for Brazil, right? Deployment toggles, as I said, recommendation engine. I want that recommendation engine, but for this particular scenario, for this particular time frame, I don't want this deployed. So I switch it off, that's not deployed, and then when I want it, I can go back and deploy it. And experiment toggles, certain features which the business thinks can add value, product thinks is good to have, but you still want to experiment. How many of you have seen Chrome flags? You see a list of features that come in as experiments. I'm not sure if I switch here, I'll get that. So if I go to Chrome, you see this? Oh, oops. Now I need your help. Yeah. So these experiments may bite. So these are things that Google has shared, but they're not still publicly enabled. If you want to try, you can go ahead and try. They call them experiments. So you can also have toggles for switching on or off these experiments. So will it come? Yeah. Okay, so these are several types of toggles that we may end up using. As I said, some may go ahead and stay for long, some may stay for a shorter time. Some are dynamic to the extent that you can go ahead and configure them any point of time. Some are dynamic only to a limited extent. For instance, if a release toggle has been marked as off once released, during deployment it will never be switched on. It will be ensured that it is switched off. But a business toggle or a deployment toggle going forward can be switched on or off. So it is more configurable than a release toggle. Similarly, experiment toggles may be more configurable than a release toggle. So the toggles may vary based on their longevity, and they may also vary based on their configurability. So again, long-lived versus transient. So release toggles and experiment toggles generally don't last for very long. So once the feature is done, the sprints have ended, it is well tested, it is good to go, you delete that toggle. And when I mean, go ahead.
So I have a basic question. Where do you control these toggles? Either on the server side or on the client side?
Yeah, I'll come to that. Yeah, we have a proper architecture, baseline architecture that we should be following when using, and there are a couple of design patterns that you should be following. I'll come to that.
One question, how you guys handle some features what you build on top of a legacy code that has to be toggled? So how you guys follow that?
Refactor.
Okay.
Refactor. You have to refactor. If there's a legacy code, whatever you want to take out from that legacy code and make it generic, and you think that will be used, keep it out of the toggle. The part of the code that will be used actually as part of that feature toggle, refactor the code, and then based on the toggles configuration, you use that. The biggest challenge that any legacy code has is to incorporate it along with the new practices that are coming in. Right? That's the biggest challenge. And I tell you, we have just moved one 22-year-old application which is being used by the government of UK to a SaaS application. And believe me, that was the toughest task rather than creating a fresh SaaS-based application. So it is always a challenge, and refactor is the first thing that will come to mind. So again, as I said, you have a couple of toggles that will stay longer and a couple of ones that will stay for a shorter period of time. The baseline architecture. Okay, so for any toggle based application, there are certain things that you have to keep in mind. One is that the toggle points in your code should be configured well and clear. Now when I say toggle points, the application that I will just show, it can either be client side or it can either be server side. It doesn't stop you. It can also be that you make a call to a third party service which is maintaining your toggles. So how you implement it is up to you, because for instance, I want that I should be able to change this without putting my application down. Then I would obviously I would configure it so that either it's a service or some configuration which doesn't require an application restart.
You
right?
can also do through access control, right?
Through access.
Through access control.
Yes, absolutely.
So Facebook has a similar feature where I can post only to the required friend circle without this toggle, right?
Without this toggle.
Yeah. So that isn't that a feature?
I'll come to when not to use it.
Okay.
Okay. So you have toggle points in your code base. Now that code base can either be server side or client side, depending on what kind of an application it is. For instance, if it is just a UI feature, this button should not be visible to this button. This is simply a UI based application. So the easiest would be to put it on the client side. But if this service or this API should not be exposed to any person to be using it, then it is server side, right? You have a toggle router which determines whether this should be toggled or not and how it should be toggled. You have a toggle configuration which maintains whether it is toggle or not, whether it is true or false, whether it is on or off. And then you have a toggle context. All the data that you are using for this particular toggle is your toggle context. So baseline, basically you should have a toggle configuration, you should have a toggle context, you should have a toggle router, and you should have toggle points. Right? These are 4 essential things that you should always be having no matter whatever you are doing. How you do it is up to you. There are a couple of design patterns that you can use.
One question. So suppose I have a problem that I'm getting data from one table and I need to enable one feature for that table only. So from a column I'm taking one value. Now new feature toggle is that from the same column I need to get a different type of value. So in that case I want to know that how can I toggle it, because the problem is that it is database based toggling. So how can we do it, because here I can see that it is related to backend code.
Yes. So you can have database enabled toggling. What if your database is down? What will the feature do? By default?
No, if database is down, then obviously application won't have any data. So
Will that feature be available or not? Suppose it's a button, okay, and the visibility of this button you are controlling through the database. Now the database is down. Will this button be shown or not?
Okay, I'll take one example of a report. So
Okay.
I need to take data from that table, and with a new feature, I need to show that data in a different format.
Okay.
So that is my feature. which is
And
coming
you
directly
want that
from
data from this particular column should not be visible.
Yes.
Right. So you will have a feature toggle which will be like, for instance, read this column, read salary column, read salary feature. This configuration you will keep in your application, read salary feature. If this is on, the report would show the salary. So the SQL would have select the salary part. If this is off, the SQL would be structured so that the salary is not selected and shown on your report.
Okay, I would quote here one example. So suppose one table in one structure. Now another
One table and one structure.
No, there is only one table. Now it is in some structure. Now with a new feature, that table is not sufficing my requirement. So I am creating a new table for the same purpose. Okay, so now data should come from a new table. Okay, now when user is doing some activities, then data should be logged in that table. So ultimately, I need to maintain both the tables in sync.
Yes.
That is
yes.
the
Till the
problem.
time your feature is ready. Till the time your feature is ready. And that is the only way you can do that in a legacy application. So these are a couple of design patterns, the old design patterns that you can use: strategy, factory, chain of responsibility, and parallel chains. I'll not go into the details, otherwise this will end up being a design pattern session. And these are a couple of frameworks that are available with us: Ruby, Python, .NET, Groovy, JavaScript, PHP, Java. They all have their own set of feature toggle frameworks that are available, which you can use within your code. Some of them are open source, some of them are not. Now we'll have a quick demonstration. Okay. Now the demonstration, how many of you have coded a hello world example ever in your life? Everybody, right? So I have kept a very simple example so that it is not difficult to understand. So the requirement is that you import a greeting message from a template file and wish the admin of the organization. So whoever is the admin of the organization, there is a greeting message in a file and you have to make use of that message to wish the admin of the organization. Also, the message can be varied and changed. So you can go ahead and change this message whenever you want. we also need to expose this greeting to the world so that someone else may use it. So for instance, I can expose this as an API so that this greeting message can be used by an email messaging service to pick this greeting message and wish the admin. The admin is really, very adamant and very flamboyant. He wants wishes every time, everywhere, okay? So this is a basic example that we'll take, okay? Or escape, right?
Escape should work.
Okay. Why can't I see it? Yeah, please.
Try.
I hope it runs. Oh, perfect. Okay. So this is in Microsoft Visual Studio. So I have my environment configured for Azure right now, so I prefer using Microsoft Visual Studio. Okay, so for this we have this toggle configuration. Okay, we'll first go stepwise. So this is a console application which will show me the message and allow. So here are two toggles that I've created: import greetings feature toggle and editable template toggle. I make both of them as false. So for now nothing is working. Okay. So this is a hard-coded message from a file. So my first sprint, it was probably a day-long sprint with one person or maybe whatever. I just had a file in place with a hard-coded message and a console application which could show me. Now this feature, this is shippable, right? I tell the person that this is the message that will be shown and this is what it is, and he will get the hard-coded message. First sprint gone, right? But the feature is still not enabled, right? Now the team works, and now we have the import message enabled, right? So the team works, and now we have the editable template as well as the import greetings. So now I tell them that okay, fine, you can give your own greetings message. So this is the message that I give, and it says fine, I give the message that you write. So it is now editable. And this is beyond the question answers, right? Yes. So it is editable and you can import it. Now I want to expose it as a service, and for that what I need is that I have the admin in the database. I configure the admin in the database. There is a service which is running in the background which picks the admin from the database and puts it in a text file. You can put it in a queue or any asynchronous system as well. For now, to keep it simple, I just kept it in a database. And this service reads from the database and updates our text file, okay? And once it updates the text file, this console application reads from the text file, okay? So now I need to coming back to your question where I should be having. Now for the other two, I would need it in the service. I don't need it in the console application because reading it from the database and exposing this functionality is part of the service. So I put that toggle in the service, but my toggle configuration is all here. So my editable template, expose API toggle, import greetings feature toggle, read database toggles, they're all configured here, right? So I have one toggle configuration which is specified at a single place, but routers decide which file will have this, right? So again I have this service, a job which is running as a Windows service, okay? And I already have this running. So in the interest of time, so it picked up from the database, right? And it updated this file because I had enabled that particular toggle in the service, and I'll show you how I enabled it. So if I would have caught this exception, I could have shown a message to the user that this functionality is wet paint, right? Now if I make use of this and finally, oops, this is not something I want. Yeah. And if I finally go ahead and run my application, I have all the toggles as true. So that means I'm done. My functionality is all done. Right? So now it is giving me an editable template. Now it is reading from the database. Now it is configured, and now it is exposed as an API. Right? So making use of configuration toggles. Now this was a release toggle example that I gave you. That means this toggle, once the sprint is done, once this feature is full and final, this will go away, right? But there can be cases wherein I let these configurations stay, right, and they stay there forever, and it is up to the DevOps team or the business team to switch them on or off. Okay, so this is what we did, right? So this was spanning several sprints, say, assume, then import greeting message, allow greeting message to be editable, allow the API to be exposed, and allow the admin name to be changed and read from the database, right? Was the example clear? When to use the feature toggle? The exact reason of why comes into when. For phased rollouts, for dark launch of a feature, for A/B testing, or for a feature which you want to be switched on or off for deployment. When not to use is more important. Please don't use it for bug fixes. That this time, let me do it, I'll fix it in the next sprint. Don't do that. I'll tell you it's a blunder. Demos to product owners. We just had it in the keynote session, right? The product owners are after our lives, do this, do this, do this. Even if he says do this, don't do it using feature toggle. Because in the end, what it will end up is that you showed it to me, so it should be done. Though that is half cooked, half baked. And you will not be able to ship it. So anything that is not shippable, please do not use toggles. And for internal builds, QA is asking for certain feature. The SIT team is after your life, give me the build, I have to release it. Don't use toggles to give them those builds. Okay, give them only what will be deployed. The life cycle is read. So first you create a toggle. The first thing that you have to do is sit up and design. I'll come to the lessons learned. I will spend more time on the lessons learned for feature toggles. So we create a toggle, we read the toggle, we update the toggle, and then finally in case you really want that toggle to go away, we delete the toggle. Okay, so I just quickly, what can happen if you are not removing toggles? It is the biggest tech debt that you can have. If you don't remove the toggle, all the if then else catches that you have placed all over, be very mindful of when you are, just put it at the entry point. If there's a function that you are supposed to call, just at the entry point put that if block. Don't just end up messing up your code everywhere, if blocks everywhere. No, don't do that. Just at the entry point have it, and the moment you are done, delete the toggle, all those, clean up the code and then release it. The software will be harder to improve, maintain, test and deploy. So there was a situation wherein we had 80 toggles. And we had no clue. Trust me, as an architect, if somebody would come up to me, Kalpna, what is this toggle for? I would say, well, yes, I'll come back to you. And then it took me probably a day or two to figure out, you know. So for a mid-size application, not more than 8 to 10 at any time. Not more than. We reduced it to 40, but still it was bad. So not more than 8 to 10, and they should probably end in a matter of, say, 3 to 4 sprints, not more than that. You lose control of toggles. I really did. I lost all the control of toggles, and I had no clue that I had to maintain an Excel sheet for those toggles as to what is each toggle doing. And then I was like, this is not done. This is not what the toggles were meant for. And it's chaos. So we have learned it the hard way. Rule is not more than 8 to 10 toggles at any time. The excessive use of toggles, as I said, 80 toggles a time, impossible. Overcomplicated, unmaintainable, buggy, very, very prone to hacks and fixes. It will be untested and poor quality. So be very mindful of using toggles. Now, lessons learned. So with all the negatives that I just shared, you would wonder why on earth should I use it, right? But no, it is a very, very essential feature in case you design it well. Design your toggles. When you are in the design phase, you should be knowing what is it that you want to put in a toggle and what is it that you actually want not to be toggled. Design pressure is utmost important for you, because once you have that pressure, you know that you have to create a toggle and you ultimately have to delete it also, right? So the moment you are thinking of a toggle, just design it. Think about where will the entry point of the toggle would be, where the configuration would be, what all can be impacted, and in case you have thought through well, trust me, you won't have issues. For a few toggles that we had started with, we had a lot of issues. But going forward, as things ironed out, it was much, much, much better. Follow the life cycle. Create, then please make sure you delete. The moment you write a story or whatever way you are managing your Agile or Scrum or Kanban board, make sure with the creation of a toggle, you also have the story for deletion of a toggle. The moment you forget doing that, you will have chaos in your code and you'll have couple of toggles. They are waiting just to be deleted, even though the feature is ready, tested and good to go. But they're still in toggle. We don't want them.
So what about those business toggles? Like which are
For business
there-
toggles, you don't go for the delete.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay, right? Because business toggle has a business sense. You know that it's relevant, right? And you actually have a proper documentation for that in all your in your deployment documents that this is how you would do it. So those toggles don't cause chaos. It is the release toggles essentially that you have been having for a couple of sprints, that cause chaos. And if you have teams that are spawning multiple geographies, multiple areas, and they have their own set of designs and own set, please just sit down and collaborate, brainstorm across each of the teams, and then go ahead for toggles. It should not be that one geography or one set of components for same thing is having one toggle and the other one is having another toggle. There should be a chief architect or somebody who knows what toggles are going in place and which all places or which all subsystems are getting impacted, and this is a single toggle for the entire workflow.
So you may have different toggles and different toggle configurations for different users. For example, for admins you have different toggles. For end users you have different toggles which they can control. So
The users never control toggles,
why not?
firstly.
Because if it's an application
Yes.
and there is a toggle that I don't want to see this information whenever I
That
log
is
in.
not a toggle. You
Why
don't give
this?
toggle for end users. No, that is a feature set. That this functionality is if it is like this particular page is not visible to the admin set of users, is to the regular set of users, that can still be done via toggle. But if you give this configuration that, okay, fine, I as a user want this is not a toggle. This is a business requirement. This has to be implemented with database wherein this particular set is implemented. Yes. This particular set of user has access. No. That is access. There is difference between feature toggle and access control. Mind it. That's where not to use it. Access control is not anything that you are giving to the end user is not where a toggle can be. Right? That is for DevOps, for business, and maximum for release, development team.
What about the admins? I mean,
What do you mean by admins? Admin of the application?
Yeah.
No. Because admin of the application is an end user of the application. If he is using only the user interface of the application, toggle is not the place. Toggle is your core software practice. It's not an end deliverable.
Is there any predefined frameworks for this?
Yes, this slide I showed you with different languages. For instance, I've used feature toggle for .NET. You have toggles, TOGGLZ for Java, and for Ruby on Rails, there are a couple of flip. Quality versus quantity. Please make sure that if a toggle, I'll just come back to you. If there's a toggle which can cater to multiple situations, create one. Just don't end up creating multiple toggles for the same set of functionality. Keep them as decoupled as possible so that you can release them simultaneously. Just don't couple toggles so tightly that since one is incomplete, you cannot release the other three. Right name. You don't want to maintain Excel sheets, right? Toggle 1, my toggle, his toggle, your toggle. Please don't do that. I have seen, Ajay's toggle. Now I go back to Ajay. Ajay, what was this toggle for? I forgot. Or Ajay leaves the organization and nobody knows what that toggle is for. And then I trace through the entire code. Oh my god, this was already being done by this toggle. He didn't need this toggle. Right? So naming is important. Don't overload. Never overload the toggles. And yes, it can be dangerous if not used properly. So be very cautious of how and when you use it. Some latent code variants, as I mentioned, Google experiments. Flickr has 10. There's a very good book that is being written on 10 plus deployments a day. There's a very good article, rather it was mentioned in one of the conferences about 10. Just Google 10 plus deployments a day. You will get that. It's I think from Paul Hammond. Awesome way of explaining toggles. Okay. Then Twitter, as I told you, it moves to Cassandra, and Facebook Messenger we all know. Now questions, dude.
Yeah, actually, in our organization we have toggle concept, but what we have multi-level toggle concept. See, one toggle is dependent on another toggle.
Don't do that. Keep them decoupled. The moment you couple them, nothing will go in production for 6 months. what will happen is one is done but the other is not done, but since they are so tightly coupled, you cannot go to production. Now the second is done but third is not done, you still cannot go. So the sense of keeping the toggle would be lost. Don't do that.
If you have a race condition,
Oh yes, absolutely, you have it. If you have a race condition, refactor, create new toggles, redesign, it's a big pain. So whenever using toggles, spend maximum time in design, thinking as to where and how you would use it.